Disclaimer. This fanfiction is only for entertainment purposes, so please don't take it seriously and don't be offended. It's just a story made out of imagination, so it doesn't define any character in real life. I hope you'll enjoy the story and leave positive comments without hating the author and character. I don't own any pictures, but the storylines are completely mine. I will do voiceover so you can mute it if you want. Hope you will like the video.
The storm outside was throwing a whole tantrum, but inside the luxury dressing room, the air was dead silent. Well, silent except for Yeon's hyperventilating. Yeon stood in front of the full-length mirror, clutching the heavy silk of a wedding dress that wasn't even meant for her. Her older sister, Sophia, had pulled off the ultimate disappearing act. 2 hours before walking down the aisle to marry Kimtaehyung, the city's most feared, ruthless mafia boss, Sophia had eloped with her gym trainer. Sophia left a sticky note on the vanity, "Sorry sis. He's cute, but he's crazy. You handle it." Yeon, handle it? Handle a man who literally controls the underground market with an iron fist? Yeon thought, her chest heaving in absolute panic. Before she could process running away herself, the heavy mahogany doors burst open. The temperature in the room plummeted to sub-zero. Enter Kimtaehyung. Custom black suit. Pitch black eyes. A sharp, terrifying jawline that could cut glass, and an aura so heavy it forced Yeon back until her heels hit the edge of the vanity. Behind him stood his chief bodyguard, Mark, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Taehyung didn't look shocked. He didn't look heartbroken. He looked like a predator who had just found a much more interesting game to play. He glanced at the empty chair, then slowly sliding his hands into his pockets. Taehyung, well. It seems my bride took a sudden detour. Tell me, Yeon, did she take a flight, or did she run away on foot like a cheap track runner? Yeon, voice trembling, fingers clutching her dress, I don't know. I swear, Taehyung. I just walked in and she was gone. Please, don't kill my family, don't kill me. Taehyung took slow, deliberate steps toward her. Every step he took made Yeon's heart violently hammer against her ribs. She pressed herself harder against the vanity, trembling from head to toe, her face pale with utter panic. Taehyung, kill your family? Sweetheart, murder is so cliché on a Sunday. Besides, why waste a perfectly good wedding hall? The flowers alone cost more than your sister's entire life. Yeon, peeling her eyes open in horror, what are you saying? Taehyung stopped right in front of her. The scent of expensive wood smoke, rain, and danger washed over her. Before she could step sideways, his large, warm hand shot out and clamped firmly around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard chest in one swift, possessive tug. Yeon gasped, her hands instinctively pressing against his shoulders to push him away, but it was like trying to move a solid brick wall. Her body shook uncontrollably in his grip. He leaned down, his mouth right at the shell of her ear, dark and velvety. Taehyung, I'm saying, little mouse, you're taking her place. You're marrying me today. Yeon, hyperventilating, shaking her head frantically, no. No, please. You're mad. You hate me. You were supposed to marry Sophia for revenge against her side of the family, not me. I didn't do anything. He chuckled low, a dangerously attractive sound that sent shivers straight down her spine. Taehyung. Ah, but that's where you're wrong. Sophia was boring. You? You look far more entertaining when you're terrified. He slid his other hand up her lower back, his long fingers pressing through the thin silk, pulling her even tighter against his hips. He savored every ounce of her panic, enjoying the useless resistance she was trying to pull. He knew, and he wanted her to know, that there was no escape. He already had her. Her whimpering, trying to twist away from his touch. Yeon, let go of me. Please, Taehyung. I can't marry a monster like you. Him grinning wickedly, his dark eyes sparkling with playful malice. Taehyung, monster? Ouch. My feelings are deeply wounded. Mark, am I a monster? Mark stood at attention by the door, completely expressionless. Mark, you're a ray of sunshine, boss. Truly an angel. Taehyung, see? Mark thinks I'm a gem. Now, stop squirming, YN. The more you fight, the more tempted I am to carry you down the aisle over my shoulder like a sack of stolen goods. Which, ironically, is exactly what you are now. My stolen property. Tears welling up in her eyes, nervous and trembling. YN, you're doing this just to ruin my life. It's revenge, isn't it? Him smirking, his hand sliding up to lightly pinch her chin, tilting her face up to his. Taehyung, revenge? Please. Revenge is work. This is just a massive upgrade. Your sister ran, but I ended up with the pretty one. Luck is clearly on my side today. YN's heart leaped into her throat. He planned this? Or is he just enjoying my misery? She couldn't tell, but the sheer power he held over her was suffocating. 10 minutes later, YN found herself standing at the altar. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't even hold the bouquet. Taehyung stood beside her, looking effortlessly dashing, utterly unbothered by the fact that he was marrying the wrong sister. The priest looked terrified, darting glances between Taehyung's holstered gun under his jacket and YN's trembling form. Priest, clearing his throat nervously, do you, Kimtaehyung, take Y/N to be your wedded wife? Him looking down at YN, his thumb casually rubbing the side of her wrist where he held her hand in a vice grip. Taehyung, I do. And I promise to spoil her, corrupt her, and never let her out of my sight. Ever. Priest, gulping hard, and do you, YN, take Kimtaehyung to be your wedded husband? YN stood frozen. Her brain shouted run, but her feet were glued to the floor. Taehyung squeezed her waist just enough to remind her who owned the room, his eyes dark, teasing, and utterly relentless. Taehyung, whispering teasingly near her ear, say I do, baby. Unless you want me to hunt your sister down and make her watch us sign the papers instead. YN, gasping softly, shuddering under his dark charm, I do. Priest, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. YN braced herself for something terrible, but before she could shrink back, Taehyung cupped the back of her neck with a large, warm palm. He yanked her close, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was possessive, hot, and completely unhurried. It was a wicked claim, meant to let her know that her life was no longer her own. When he finally pulled back, YN was breathless, her face burning red, her knees buckling slightly. Taehyung caught her effortlessly by the waist, a dark, dangerous smirk on his lips. Taehyung, welcome to the dark side, Mrs. Kim. Don't worry. I spoil my pets thoroughly. By midnight, the slick black SUV pulled up to Taehyung's massive, heavily guarded estate. YN was practically trembling out of her skin as Taehyung stepped out, opened her door, and offered his hand. YN didn't take it. She shrank back into the leather seat. YN, I want my own room. Taehyung scoffed, reaching inside, grabbing her by the waist with zero effort, and pulling her straight out into his arms like she weighed nothing. YN, panicking, pushing at his chest, hey. Put me down. You pervert. Let me walk. Him carrying her bridal style through the giant doors while the guards bowed. Taehyung, a pervert? Sweetheart, I'm your husband. It's in the legal contract that I get to carry you wherever I want. Besides, you're shaking so much you'd fall on your face in those heels. He kicked open the master bedroom door and tossed her gently onto an absurdly soft, giant king-sized bed. YN immediately scrambled backward, pulling a velvet pillow to her chest like a shield. YN. Staring at him with wide, fearful eyes, stay away from me, Taehyung. I know what you are. You're a cold-blooded killer. Taehyung slowly unbuttoned his collar, tossing his suit jacket onto a chair. He walked toward the bed with the calm, predatory grace of a panther, unbuckling his expensive watch and placing it on the nightstand. Taehyung, cold-blooded? Absolutely. Killer? On bad days, yes. But to you? He leaned over the bed, placing one hand on either side of her, trapping her completely under his shadow. Taehyung, to you, I'm just your very rich, very dangerous husband who is about to ruin your sweet little life in the best way possible. YN, swallowing hard, her voice a small whisper, what are you going to do to me? Him reaching out, his thumb gently tracing her bottom lip, his dark eyes turning hot and intense. Taehyung, first? I'm going to make you eat something because you look like a breeze could blow you away. Second? I'm going to buy you everything you've ever wanted. And third? He leaned down, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of her neck, making her gasp sharply as a jolt of heat ran through her veins. Taehyung, whispering against her skin, I'm going to make you forget you ever had a life before me. You're mine now, YN. Try to escape all you want, it just makes the hunt so much more fun. YN gripped the pillow tighter, her heart pounding violently against her chest. She was terrified, completely trapped, and thoroughly at his mercy, and yet, as he pulled back with a wicked, teasing grin, a terrifying realization hit her. She wasn't just his captive. She was stuck with a psycho who was far too handsome, far too playful, and far too determined to make her love him. The next morning, the sun bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the master suite, but YN hadn't slept a wink. She had spent the entire night curled into a tight ball on her side of the massive king-sized bed, flinching every time Taehyung so much as shifted in his sleep. When she finally mustered the courage to open her eyes, she was met with a pair of intense, dark eyes staring directly at her. Taehyung was already awake, leaning on one elbow, looking infuriatingly handsome with messy bedhead and a black silk robe loosely tied around his waist. One of his large, heavy arms was draped possessively over her waist, anchoring her flush against his body. Her gasping, instantly panicking as she tried to squirm backward. YNW, what are you doing? Let go of me. Him tightening his grip, pulling her even closer until her nose almost brushed his chest. Taehyung, good morning to you too, wife. And no. This is my bed, you are my wife, and my arm stays right here. Her face burning, her hands pressing nervously against his chest to keep some distance. Taehyung, please. I can't breathe when you're this close. Him smirking, his thumb tracing the curve of her hip over the duvet. Taehyung, liar. Your heart is pounding so fast I can feel it against my ribs. Are you scared, little mouse? Or is my breathtaking face just overwhelming for you so early in the morning? Her glaring at him, though her trembling voice betrayed her fear. You are completely insane. You're a narcissistic, dangerous mafia lunatic. Him grinning, leaning down to lightly nip at her cheek, making her shriek in surprise. Taehyung, narcissistic? Maybe. But I'm your lunatic now. Now, get up. We have a very busy day of corrupting you with my money. An hour later, YN was sitting nervously on a velvet couch in the massive walk-in closet, wrapped in an oversized plush robe. She jumped when the heavy doors swung open and three women in sharp suits walked in, pushing racks overflowing with designer clothes, diamonds, and shoes. Behind them walked Taehyung, holding a fresh cup of black coffee like he owned the entire universe. YN, staring in utter shock, her jaw dropping, what is all this? Him taking a sip of his coffee, casually leaning against the doorframe. Taehyung, your new wardrobe. Your sister took all her things, which works out great because her taste in fashion was absolute garbage. She shook her head violently, clutching her robe tightly around herself. I don't want your clothes. I don't want your diamonds. You think you can just buy me off after forcing me into this marriage? Taehyung dropped his coffee cup onto a side table and walked slowly toward her. His dark aura instantly filled the room, making the stylists freeze in terror before Taehyung flicked his wrist, silently ordering them to leave. The heavy doors clicked shut, leaving YN completely trapped with him again. Wyan squeezed her eyes shut in panic as he knelt right between her knees, his hand sliding up to grip the sides of her waist tightly, trapping her against the back of the couch. His voice dropping into a low, velvet hum, his face inches from hers. Taehyung, look at me, Wyan. Wyan hesitantly opened her eyes, her lower lip trembling. His eyes dark, possessive, yet carrying a wicked spark. Taehyung, I'm not trying to buy you off, sweetheart. I already own you. Buying you clothes is just me decorating my prettiest possession. Now, are you going to pick an outfit, or should I pick one for you and put it on you myself? Her breath hitching, her eyes widening in pure panic. Wyan, why you wouldn't dare? You pervert. Him teasingly moving his hands higher up her ribs, making her gasp and squirm. Taehyung, try me, Mrs. Kim. My patience is short, but my hands are very fast. Wyan, squeaking in fright, trying to push his wrists away, fine. Fine. I'll pick something. Just move away from me. Taehyung chuckled darkly, his eyes dancing with amusement at how easily he could make her flutter. He gave her waist one last firm, possessive squeeze before slowly standing up and smoothing down his suit. Taehyung, good girl. Dress pretty. We're going down to breakfast, and if you don't eat at least 2 pancakes, I'll feed them to you myself, with my mouth. Her gasping in absolute scandal, snatching a nearby throw pillow and hurling it at his head. Wyan, get out. Taehyung caught the pillow easily with one hand, tossing it back onto the bed with a low, dangerous laugh that vibrated straight to her core. Taehyung, 10 minutes, wife. Tick-tock. 10 minutes later, Wyan crept down the grand marble staircase, wearing a simple burgundy silk dress that reached her knees. She felt like a prisoner walking toward execution. When she entered the dining hall, a massive spread of pastries, fruits, coffee, and pancakes covered the long mahogany table. Taehyung was sitting at the head of the table, reading a tablet. Standing right behind him was Mark, looking as stoic as ever. Taehyung looked up, his eyes sliding down her body in a slow, scorching rake that made Wyan's skin ignite. Taehyung, smirking, red suits you. It matches the color your face gets whenever I touch you. Her pulling out a chair as far away from him as possible, sitting on the very edge of her seat. Wyan, I am sitting here under duress. Taehyung, glancing at Mark, Mark, did you hear that? She's under duress. Mark, without blinking, sounds tragic, boss. Should I call her lawyer, or should I pour her orange juice? Taehyung, pour the juice, Mark. Wyan stared at the breakfast spread, her throat dry from anxiety. She picked up a fork and began nervously poking at a pancake, her mind racing with thoughts of escaping. Maybe I can bribe a guard? No, they all look like hitmen. Maybe I can jump out a window? We're on the 3rd floor. Taehyung silently watched her panic-stricken expression, enjoying every second of her little brain trying to plot an impossible escape. Suddenly, he stood up, walked over to her end of the table, and pulled her chair right next to his. Wyan, dropping her fork, flinching, what are you doing? Taehyung sat down beside her, reaching out to wrap his arm around her chair, bringing his face dangerously close to her neck. Taehyung, you're overthinking again, little mouse. I can practically hear your brain trying to calculate how fast you can run toward the main gate. Wyan, whimpering softly, terrified by how easily he read her, I wasn't. His hand sliding onto her bare knee under the table, his fingers warm and possessive, sending a shiver through her whole body. Taehyung, listen to me carefully, Wyan. You can run all you want, but every step you take, I'll be right behind you. The world outside is dangerous. But in here? Under me? You're completely safe. Her looking into his dark eyes, her voice barely a whisper. Wyan, safe? You're a mob boss. You're the most dangerous thing in this room. Him grinning wickedly, his hand sliding slightly higher up her thigh, teasingly bold. Taehyung, exactly. Which means nobody else dares to touch what's mine. Now, Take a bite of the pancake before I lose my self-control and eat you for breakfast instead. Yn quickly snatched her fork and shoved a piece of pancake into her mouth, her face burning hot, her hands trembling. Taehyung watched her swallow, a satisfied, deeply romantic yet dangerously wicked smile blooming across his sharp face as he rested his chin in his hand, unable to take his eyes off his new, terrified, captivating little wife. The rest of the morning was a chaotic blur of Yn trying to stay as far away from Taehyung as humanly possible, while Taehyung made it his personal life goal to invade her personal space every single second. Around noon, Taehyung dragged her, quite literally, by her wrist, into his massive private home office. The room smelled of dark leather, expensive cognac, and pure power. Heavy wooden bookshelves lined the walls, and behind his giant marble desk was a floor-to-ceiling glass window overlooking the heavily guarded estate grounds. Yn stood near the door, clutching her silk dress, her eyes darting toward the double mahogany doors like a caged animal looking for an open latch. Him sitting down in his leather armchair, kicking his feet up on the desk, and smirking at her panic. Taehyung. If you stare at those doors any harder, little mouse, they might actually catch fire. Sit down before you pass out from sheer panic. She shook her head violently, her voice trembling. Yn, I prefer standing. Further away from you. Him sighing dramatically, putting a hand over his heart. Taehyung, ouch. My legally wedded wife refuses to come near me. Mark, bring me a glass of whiskey, my heart is breaking into a million pieces. Mark standing in the corner, utterly unfazed, pouring a glass of whiskey. Mark, I'll prepare the funeral arrangements for your broken heart, boss. Should I invite her runaway sister to the service? Yn, gasping, looking at Mark in shock, you guys are both insane. Completely, certifiably insane. Taehyung chuckled, a dark, velvet sound that vibrated through the room. He pointed a long, tattooed finger toward the leather couch in front of his desk. Taehyung, couch. Now. Or I will personally walk over there, pick you up, put you on my lap, and force you to sit on me for the rest of the afternoon. Your choice, baby.Yn's face flushed a furious, hot red. She practically sprinted to the couch and slammed herself down, clutching a leather throw pillow tightly against her chest like a shield. Yn, glaring at him with wide, terrified eyes, you are a pervert. A possessive, ruthless pervert. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes darkening as he watched her body language. Taehyung, possessive? Absolutely. Ruthless? When I need to be. But pervert? Sweetheart, if I were being a pervert, we wouldn't be sitting in this office with our clothes on. Yn squeezed the pillow harder, her heart thumping wildly against her ribs. Every word that came out of his mouth was a mix of terrifying authority and wicked flirting. She hated how easily he rattled her, but even more, she hated how her stomach flipped every time his dark eyes locked onto hers. Suddenly, a loud knock rattled the office door. The playful, teasing expression on Taehyung's face vanished instantly. In a split second, his jaw hardened, his posture shifted, and his eyes turned cold enough to freeze hell over. The sudden transformation sent a cold shiver straight downYn's spine. This was the mafia boss the underground feared. The door opened, and two towering men in black suits walked in, dragging a heavily bruised, tied-up man who was trembling violently. Her gasping, scrambling back into the couch cushions in pure shock. Yn, what is this? Who is that? Taehyung didn't even look at her. His gaze remained dead set on the trembling man on the floor. His voice chillingly calm, devoid of any fun or sarcasm. Taehyung, just business, Yn. Mark, take her out. Yn stood up on wobbly legs, her knees shaking so badly she could barely stand. But before she could step toward the door, the bound man on the floor suddenly broke free from the guard's grip and lunged forward, not toward Taehyung, but toward her. Man, screaming frantically, help me. Please. Tell him to let me go. Yn, screaming in terror, backing away, sto. Before the man could even touch the hem of her dress, a heavy, dark shadow moved like lightning. Taehyung was suddenly there. In one swift, lethal movement, Taehyung grabbed the man by the throat, slammed him brutally onto the marble floor, and pressed the polished barrel of a black handgun directly against the man's forehead. The sound of the gun cocking echoed loudly through the room. The entire office fell dead silent, except for Hyen's violent hyperventilating. She was frozen in horror, her back pressed against the wall, her hands over her mouth. His voice dangerously quiet, whispering like a demon. Taehyung, you made two very fatal mistakes today. First, you stole from my docks. Second. He pressed the gun harder into the man's forehead, his knuckles turning white. Taehyung, you dared to breathe in my wife's direction. Man, crying out, shaking hysterically, I'm sorry. Mr. Kim, please. Mercy. Taehyung, smiling, but his eyes were completely dead, mercy is out of stock today. Mark, drag him to the basement. I'll deal with him after I comfort my terrified bride. Mark nodded, instantly dragging the sobbing man out of the room and slamming the heavy mahogany doors behind them. The office was quiet again. Hyen was trembling violently, her chest heaving, her hands shaking as she stared at the gun in Taehyung's hand. He casually engaged the safety, slid the weapon back into his shoulder holster, and turned his attention to her. The moment his eyes fell on her terrified, pale face, the cold, murderous energy around him melted away, replaced once again by that relentless, dark intensity. Taehyung took slow, deliberate steps toward her. She whispered, her voice cracking as she pressed herself harder against the wall. Hyen, don't come near me. You're a monster. Taehyung stopped right in front of her, trapping her between the wall and his large, intimidating frame. He reached out, ignoring her small gasp, and wrapped his long arms around her waist, yanking her flush against his hard chest. Hyen instinctively put her hands on his chest to push him away, but her arms felt weak, trembling against his solid muscles. Taehyung leaned down, resting his forehead against hers, his warm breath fanning across her lips. Taehyung, did I scare you, little mouse? Hyen, tears spilling over her eyelashes, her voice panicky. Hyen, yes. You almost killed him in front of me. You have a gun. You're dangerous. His large, warm hand sliding up her spine, pressing her tight against his hips, his thumb gently wiping away a tear from her cheek. Taehyung, I told you, sweetheart. I am the most dangerous thing in this world. But you? You're the only person who never has to fear my gun. Hyen looked up into his dark, intoxicating eyes, whimpering softly. Hyen, you're crazy. He grinned wickedly, his lips dangerously close to hers. Taehyung, crazy for you? Absolutely. Now, since you've had a traumatic afternoon, I think it's time I fulfill my marital duty and spoil you rotten. Hyen, gasping, trying to pull her head back, what does that even mean? Him scooping her up into his arms effortlessly, ignoring her small squeal of surprise as she reflexively wrapped her arms around his neck to keep from falling. Taehyung, it means, Mrs. Kim, we are going black card shopping online, and then I am holding you hostage in bed while we watch movies. Hyen blushing furiously, her heart beating ridiculously fast against her ribs. Hyen, I don't want to watch movies with a mafia leader. Taehyung kissing the side of her soft neck teasingly as he carried her toward the door. Taehyung, too bad, baby. You signed the contract. Well, technically I made you say I do, but details don't matter. You're mine now, and there is no escape for you. Ever.